Picks and Bans, Burrito versus Valence Squadron. And we heard him talking a little bit about it on the desk here. This is a very important set for Valence Squadron coming out here to prove that they can beat some of the, maybe lower-end teams, at least performing that way, and try and get closer up towards the top.
The problem also is that Burrito are also in a situation here too, because only the top 6 teams make it through to the SPL next year.
Yeah.
So relegations this time, they're not relegations, they're auto-relegations is the best way of doing it. You don't get a chance to stay back in, so Burrito have to find wins. They've not found much so far. One split, one loss. Obviously, the loss was against one of the top-tier teams.
Yeah.
But they've got to start getting consistency, because Pappies, who are the other fringe team for the bottom 2 spots here, are really picking up pace, and Burrito don't have time to waste. Valence Squadron, meanwhile, well, they're still trying to get at least to mid-table now. And the likes of Elevate and Pappy's now performing. Valence is looking in a precarious position right now.
EU is very, very close right now, especially in that middle of the pack. So if you don't want to be in the middle of the pack, if you want to be near the top, if you want to get relegated out, then you got to show up in sets like this. That's what we're going to be seeing from Valence Squadron. And Burrito look like they want to win because they're taking Scotty with that first pick here.
Yeah, first pick Scotty's interesting. I mean, most of the time it's going to be dual lane, no real changes there, but it does leave a lot available. Like Kukullan, he's not had the greatest win ratios in terms of competitive play, but he's been a very solid, consistent pick throughout. His early game hasn't been too bad whatsoever in terms of wave clear, being able to get that rage online, and then of course, Terra.
Yeah, Terra, not a surprise to see Terra get picked here. But to talk a little bit about like Kukullan, like you were saying, when we see him piloted by some of these high-level solo laners, and I mean like the elite upper echelon, that's when we really start to see the best come out of that god, controlling the way that they go into that rage form so well, as we see Burrito lock in that Ao Kuang here as well.
And that's for Johnny, and Johnny is the Ao Kuang. And you were talking about like piloting the god very well. Johnny can really play the Ao Kuang to a very high level. Most people will be aware that he's going to be looking to run this god the most of the time. And that Valence squad pick of Terra, like even though it's very safe, is technically flexible to the solo lane on the odd occasion. What it does do is it allows you to potentially escape the Ao Kuang, or when Ao Kuang's going for the burst combo, that little heal can actually help Impact because of the ultimate that obviously heals you back up, and then you're not in execute range.
You know who could really benefit from that Terra ultimate, or at least that movement speed, is a Muzen Cobb, who's pretty immobile. He does a lot of damage for you in that dual lane, but Terra, giving that extra movement speed on top of the nuts movement speed he already gets, is pretty darn good for him to help make him safe.
Not necessarily dual lane. We've seen most of the Muzen Cobb plays we've seen so far be towards the mid lane, and I know Lobster won't be too scared of that.
Yeah.
The one thing about a Muzen Cobb here that I do like, and I think is a good decision, is that bees do manage to go through stealth and bring them out of stealth, because it's a dot damage. So against an Ao Kuang that he's going to try and close the gap on, the honey just all over the floor around, you just spray that honey down and be like, yeah, I'm safe. You're going to cross that threshold. I'm going to see you come in.
It's a little bit of a panic button, I guess, against Johnny on that Ao Kuang. We do see Thoth locked in here for Valence Squadron to that mid lane. A lot of Thoth being picked up here lately and been played to some pretty good success as well. Soul picked up as well as Ganesh. We saw a little bit of focus from Valence, banning out the Geb, trying to take some of those supports out, but Ganesh still available, so you're not feeling bad when you got Ganesh.
No, not really. I mean, Ganesh is pretty solid all around. The team fight stage is where he's going to be very strong, and if you actually look at what Valence Squadron's mobility is like here, outside of Terra, then all these are going to be, they're all basically ground-based movement characters, other than Kukullan, I guess, with the leap. But a Muzen Cobb, he's got to go through the Domic pillars.
Yes.
You're going to get slowed every time, and you're going to have to sit inside that square and then be much more susceptible for follow-up damage.
That's kind of something a Muzen Cobb likes to do, though. He likes to pick out an area. This is where I want to fight you, like near those hives in particular, and it ends up being a real big problem for you. He's so good at boxing. So something that's going to be very interesting to watch out if Funballer is in a trouble there, or if that's a place where he can maybe set up a way to turn back around onto his opponents. And it looks like it is going to be Funballer taking it over to the dual lane Lobster, taking the Thoth.
What a time to be alive to see so many Muzen Cobbs in game. In the dual lane, in the mid lane, everyone said he was trash, he wasn't competitively viable. And the main reason for that is the fact that he's not very good at escaping. His only real form of escape is to kill his opposition that's trying to kill him.
Right now we're seeing lots of Bombas Masks comes out here for Valence Squadron. That's something that's pretty standard nowadays, the item. Especially at these higher levels, so good for kind of going back, getting some more health off these camps, especially like Funballer has. He goes in and, of course, has a hard time trading with that Scotty, able to come back in, get a little bit more health, go back to lane. As Sibby is alone over here against both Ducky and Fails on that right-hand side.
I do like the look at the start of this game, the 2 sprints that you see for Burrito. This is going to just nullify a little bit of what Fails can do on this Nemesis. Obviously, Nemesis is all about the slows and being able to consistently get the slows away, but look at this invade from Burrito on the left against Big Man Tings. Going to be successful.
And they were right to do it. That lets him take that red buff. Big Man Ting's unable to contest it over there. And that's
so
because Funballer's not in
Yeah.
the duo lane. He's over here at this speed buff on the right-hand side. They let Big Man Tings take the duo lane essentially solo, and then he's helping the mid lane.
So the big key here for Valence Squad is the fact that Terra's level 1 is absolutely god-awful in terms of clearing camps or doing anything useful. So you're going to lose the duo lane more than likely anyway. Why not put this AMC in the mid lane with Lobster to start? Because Toth and AMC together, that is almost like a wet dream in terms of the amount of clear they're going to have. You know, it's going to be so solid for them. The only one that can really think is put an Icy Stare instead of Toth, and you've got probably two of the best wave clearers at the start of the game.
And it feels like they've essentially sacrificed the duo side jungle in favor of this solo side jungle, as they do successfully invade the speed, or take the speed buff on the right-hand side, but it's on the left-hand side where Burrito invade that whole top-end jungle. So that's what's going to be important for them, as now they do go up and, you know, secure some of those buffs on that end too.
And think about the fact the right-hand side of the map is where everyone likes to focus on in the early stages. Obviously, Gold Fury not as worthwhile in the early stages anyway.
Yeah.
And even with just Fusify and Kispanify here at 2 and 3, there's not going to be a whole lot they can take. Sure, they'll get red. Sure, they'll get purple buff. But speed and blue are so much more important in these early stages of the game.
They do end up taking that Oracle Vision, does Burrito. So now they're the one with that Vision on Gold Fury, but as you said, not as important this early in the game as it does provide more gold the later on they go. So those elementals, some of that farm that's not always going to be there, is the one that's under control of Valence, as Fails gets some good poke in the mid lane onto Ferricry.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of pressure from Fails there, because this is allowing Funballer to start rotating back to the duo lane now, and Kispanify's in a bit of trouble here.
Kispanify is in trouble. Terra already used the dash, but still has those walls available. Damage from Funballer, putting it in, but Kispanify using the minion wave the best he can, but he does get caught out, just trying to give Fusify a chance to rotate in.
Yeah, he was never going to get a chance to really get away from that. He used his beads to get rid of the root from Terra early on, and then the walls were just still being held. So as soon as beads were off cooldown, there comes the walls. And if you notice what Funballer does, he doesn't waste time. He just slowly wanders up the lane with his little wings and a couple of auto attacks, and first blood goes to Valence Squad.
And the movement speed buff as well. So Funballer realized that he was going to have the movement advantage there. And it's frustrating when you die and you have to use beads as part of that. That's a real long cooldown that he won't have when he comes back into the lane, and Fails is over here waiting to try and abuse Kispanify and keep that Scotty from getting to the mid game where she can do a lot of damage.
Now, other things we didn't really touch on as well is the fact that Johnny on the Ao Kuang, we mentioned it in picks and bans, he loves this Ao Kuang, he's very good, but one of the ways to shut down an Ao Kuang in the early game, consistently invade.
Yeah.
Why is this AMC in the mid lane at the start? Let's take away that speed buff. Let's make sure Johnny takes a while to hit level 5, because he wants to get 5 as quick as possible and try and get these stacks online by getting a couple of early executes.
It really feels like that's what the strategy is from Valence Squadron here. It's very difficult against Bologna in the solo lane to sort of keep her down, so they didn't put a whole lot of focus there. Instead, let's look in on Johnny. Let's look at Kispanify, those late game carries that we can at least delay from getting to that point where they're so effective. And that's why we see Valence Squadron sitting on almost 1,000 gold lead already. And again, another fight over here on that speed buff. On the right-hand side, Sibby already very low, getting poked out by Ducky. Ultimate is committing here from Fusify as well as from Ferricry. It comes over the top of the fight. Sibby gets taken down by Big Man Tings.
Not sure about the commitment there out of Burrito whatsoever. Sibby jumping into that fight when he was already dropped very low.
Yeah.
Ferricry kind of uses ult for zoning, if anything else, because he was in a bit of a tricky position himself. And then Burrito just tried to force a fight they should have just disengaged from. Now it's Kispanify in trouble too.
Yeah, when it bleeds back into this duo lane side here. This is what we were seeing a little bit from our matches yesterday. When you're able to establish the aggro here on the right-hand side, or duo lane side, or any side of the map, and these high-level teams will take that aggro and use it over here on these other sides to start invading on your buff when you think you're safe at your own red. And now that's how they're going to continue to help keep Kispanify down. That XP lead, though, that's what's really troublesome at 2,800.
And that's a good point. It's 35 now, right this second, with this minion wave coming in too. But the pressure with how this is going on, it's they're taking it in turns to be the ones that are pressuring. Valence Squad finding wins at the speed, finding wins at the blue. The only thing that Burrito have really found here overall is just the oracles. If you think about the whole side of the map, everywhere on the map, if you're just getting oracles and the rest of the team's getting everything else, you're going to have a good time.
Sibby once again in trouble. Ducky jumping in, just bringing Sibby down to half health, trying to force him to back here, keeping up the pressure that we were talking about. And we say it a lot. It's one of those hot button things. We're playing as a 5-man team. We're playing as a team. This is where getting a lead in solo lane and maybe you're not communicating with your team is one thing, but being able to help it, you know, spread across the rest of the map as they've done here in this game is what we mean when we say playing at a high level. A lot of the times you see the difference between those ones that come from Challenger Cup and then the ones that are consistently good.
The one thing I do like as well is the attention to detail we're starting to see out of some of the junglers now towards the solo lane. Reason being is because there's no teleports anymore.
Yeah.
No one's really going for the teleport, which means if you can poke somebody out in that lane, force them back to base, they are going to lose farm, and you are going to just naturally get your solo laner ahead by just chipping away the health bar. You don't have to kill them, just get them back to base and jobs are good.
A lot of the times that is better even than getting a kill, and people overcommit onto kills thinking that they have to get it, but forcing them back is essentially like a respawn timer in and of itself, as they do have to go back and walk. Big Man Tings, though, I want to talk a little bit about him. Valence Squadron do have a lot of kills here, but 2 of them are on Terra. That's not necessarily where you always want those to go.
It's not doom and gloom, but look what Big Man Tings chose to do with the gold income that he got for those. You don't always see a Hide of the Urchin rush coming out from supports because even though it is a viable item, it's expensive.
And it's a little selfish, isn't it? Yeah.
It's selfish too, but generally auras have started to dip a little bit more, so you see a couple more selfish builds coming out nowadays from the supports. But Hide of the Urchin, expensive item, but if you get this gold, use it effectively.
Yeah.
He's investing in a late game sort of build here that's going to be better early on, and Johnny could have been in trouble.
Trying to get the stun over the wall is Lobster, just a little bit off the mark. Fusify rotating in as Johnny does fall to try and stop Lobster's damage, but he immediately gets turned on. Able to back out away from danger, but he's still very low. Fails, and Sibby now duking it out with a little bit of help from Ducky. The up and down from Sibby, but immediately gets returned by Fails. Farrakrick in a lot of trouble here as well, but he's actually able to go back to base.
And what happens every time the speed buff spawns? Valence Squad group up there. Burrito turn up in little droves. Not as a whole team. They come in one by one, slowly but surely, and get picked off every single time. Sibby, once again, don't know why he ulted there in place. He was already low on health. Farrakrick had already used most of his abilities before he even tried to go in with the ultimate there of the Eagles Rally, and it just made him die immediately. There was nothing else he could do.
Sibby perhaps recognizing he was caught out, trying to get some kind of return damage in, as there were some low health bars on Valence Squadron, but as you said, very caught out, and it didn't look like there was much of a chance. Fusify.
Look at his level. Look at Fusify's level compared to Johnny's right now. Johnny is a level behind the support, and that is not something you ever want to be. Granted, you know, a support like Ganesh does have increased range for getting experience, thanks to his passive, but it's still not good news when your jungler that is an Ao Kuang, that is your late game powerhouse, is this far behind as it stands.
Look at the speed buff for Burrito, too. It's covered in sentry wards by Valence Squadron. They really have annexed to that side of the map. That's their speed buff now, it feels
and what
like.
Burrito need to recognize now is that if Valence Squadron are going to be committing 3 or 4 members to this right-hand side, they need to go for Gold Furies. They need to start pressuring this left-hand side, drawing members of Valence Squad away from the speed buff. Or, if the speed buff is going to be that aggressive, just send Sibby to just Eagles Rally and die like he keeps doing, right? And then he'll die. The 4 members will still be grouped there trying to take the speed, while the rest of your team gets the Gold Fury. Puts the pressure onto Funball, who could get himself in an awkward spot.
Big Man Tings looping around. Beads immediately come out from Caspanify. The wall clap hits in, and so does the ultimate from Funballer. Immediately blows up Caspanify.
Clean, and that's just wall coverage again. If you look at where all the little Christmas tree lights on the map, it's all red as it stands right now. Plenty on this side, so you can see full vision. And poor Caspanify didn't know Terra was making the rotation. The calls from Burrito, they seem to be very slow on the rotations of noticing where the enemy is every single time, and they're getting beat to these objectives all the time.
Vision control really is the name of the game, though. Fails just now lurking in the jungle. That's what went so well for Big Man Tings, able to loop around almost underneath Caspanify on that duo lane side when there's no way for them to recognize these rotations coming in because the vision is entirely Valence Squadron. There's not really much these squishy characters can do to try and stay safe.
And now with how the game starts, I mean, it's less than 10 minutes in, 7-0. Burrito haven't really done anything in this game. All they're trying to do is tread water water for as long as possible, buy themselves a window to get back into it. But what Valence Squad have done very well here is not let up the pressure whatsoever. Look at Fails just in mid over and over again, just throwing out the chops, trying to get some free damage off. And with the changes to Nemesis too, that's why you see a little bit more of these Nemesises will start to be played even more often than we saw previously.
And that point's especially good that you brought up because it's not as if they're out of position on Burrito. There's not like they're way up in the jungle of Valence Squadron. You know, we're seeing deaths by their own speed buff right there at mid lane. Caspanify was maybe a few steps outside of his tower range. That's what the pressure is. That's what the vision control is, making it dangerous for you to even go for your buffs. As once again, Fails is just there on cooldown, getting Sibby zoned out. Sibby actually goes in with the ultimate, I believe. Ducky, though, in that rage form, has
Body
Sibby
blocks.
pinned up against the wall.
Yeah, the
ultimate
pillar.
comes out for Fusify to try and keep him alive, but it's not enough as Ferrocrit commits the ultimate on the left side as well.
But look what Valence Squad did here. As I was saying, hey, you know what? If I was Burrito, I'd be looking at Gold Fury here. Well, Valence is like, you know what? If I was Burrito, I'd be looking at Gold Fury here too because I keep losing my speed. But what did Valence do? Send 2 members to that Gold Fury themselves and try and do it at the same time as the speed buff.
And they're able to do it because Ducky and Fails are like 3 levels up on their direct lane opponents. So the 2 of them can take that 2v2 and fight in speed all game long, and they're happy to do it. That frees them up to go over as Joni is already very low. Lobster with that ultimate final judgment does send Joni back to base as well.
This could be a Gold Fury attempt very quickly now as well. With Fails coming back from base, although he would rather get his speed buff like every jungler in the world would. He's more important than speed than anything else. But with Funballer here against the Skadi, the one thing is Calder kind of suffers against the Muzen Cobb just because of the dot damage. We keep mentioning that. And someone who's suffering right now is Ganesh.
Ganesh under a lot of trouble here from Ducky as Funballer is able to take that tier 1 and left, forcing Caspanify back and then able to use those highs for the increased attack speed. Just shredded through the tower did Funballer. There's really not much Caspanify can do in this matchup. He's down 3 levels or 2 levels and a half.
And now more pressure onto Sibby as Fails rotates in. The shield early on to try and just get a bit of free poke off if anything else and return some damage back. But now Burrito are just their backs against the wall. This is looking very lopsided in terms of the game so far. And it's almost at that point where I don't like calling it, but at 11 minutes in, it's almost like, well, there's almost no way back into this game unless Valence Squad start making big mistakes.
The goal difference is 5,700 at this point, but the real story is the 11,000 experience lead coming in particularly for Ducky and Fails, who are so far up on Sibby and Johnny right now. 9-0 are the kills, and we're only 12 minutes into this game. And as you said, it does already feel rather hopeless. We saw some good comebacks, though, here, even just in this split, so I certainly won't call it over for Burrito. If they can make some strong defenses on these objectives, it's always possible to come back in.
And the big thing, though, is that 5k gold, if you split it amongst all 5 players, it's 1,000 gold each, which when you think about how many wards they've placed down, so you drop it to 800 gold each for all the wards, well, you've got a starter item up, if anything, in terms of your build, but 800 gold gets you towards finishing your items a little bit earlier, and that's what you can see on the right-hand side. Valence Squad's itemization here is a little bit further ahead in terms of completion, or has been completed at least into the 3rd items.
Lobster recognizing as Valence Squadron start up the Gold Fury that they are very far ahead, got that Doom Orb already at 44 stacks, and he's on the safe though, so he's not too worried about dying. Fusify, though, commits in to try and stop them from pulling this Gold Fury, only get them to drop it for a moment as Fails is zoning out Joni and Ferrocrit here in the mid lane as well. Fusify, Caspanify, though, both have their ultimates available, dropping down the ice carpet, and Big Main Teens goes in on Fusify. The ultimate comes out from Fails as well, and Fusify gets blown up.
And what exactly happened there is, so you guys know at home, basically Terra, Big Man Tings played that really well with Funballer. But hold that thought, I'll come back to that fight in a second, because here's the commit for the Gold Fury, which is still alive. Funballer's going to take out Ferrocrit very quickly, the walls come down and Tings gets another. And then Lobster says, GG, Caspanify, thank you so much. As we get another 3 kills and a Gold Fury.
Ends up being 4-for-0 overall. Gold Fury goes down in favor of Valence Squadron. Gold lead that we were just talking about careening up to 8,000 now in their favor.
So that Gold Fury attempt, when they were doing that and you watched what Amuzen Carb and Terra were doing, they were just continuing to slowly lower it down, keep Ganesh and keep Scotty interested, you know, keep them watching the Gold Fury. And Terra got 2 rotations off with all her abilities there. Yeah. That's what they were doing. The first rotation pokes him down, second rotation confirms the kill. Then they get the Gold Fury off the back of it. Burrito needs to recognize that if you're going to commit, then you commit when Terra's abilities are down, or you reset and just try and give it up. I know you want to try and stand around there, but it's a very risky play, and Valence knew exactly what they were doing.
Valence Squadron also able to take the Portal Demon off the advantage that they got from that engagement. The real problem there, though, Joni and Ferrocrit try and rotate into the back line of that team fight. Maybe if they're even, that works for them, but they immediately gets turned on and surrounded in that engagement, blown up almost immediately.
It's like you're waiting for Valence to make a mistake, which they're not, as Ferrocrit's going to be forced to use the beads there as well. And now the tier 1 tower's being sieged down as Lobster pokes him down a little bit more. But Burrito are either trying to wait for Valence to make a mistake, which they're not doing, or they're trying to make a big-time play that you wouldn't really want in your ranked games, but you kind of have to make it to try and find some way to be happy about how this game's going and find a window to get back into it.
Caspanify and Sibby hanging out on these outside lanes, trying to find some kind of farm in this jungle that feels like it's almost entirely going in favor of Valence Squadron as they group up as 5 to push down this tier 2 tower in mid lane. They've already got the tier 1s on all 3 lanes. This is just that natural progression. AMC so good at putting in damage on the towers.
It's going to be a slaughter, an absolute slaughter. I'll tell you that now, because they're just going to get poked down consistently. Look at how much poke they've got on this team too. Just think about that. Amuz and Carbon Toth, the amount of distance these guys can cover and just keep chipping away at you, and then it's going to force Burrito to commit.
Sibby jumps in and fails, immediately drops the ultimate on him to shred those protections, and it's Ducky though who goes into the backline, keeping 4 busy in that rage form, freeing a big man Tings and Funballer in the backline to just shred through that tower. Tier 2 does fall in favor of Valence Squadron.
Now Valence Squadron there could have committed. They could have tried to get a deicide and wipe the whole team, because Burrito were very low, and with Ducky's engagement, they could have followed up on that. But why do it? Why take the risk of making the mistake when you get the tier 2 tower for free? Everybody's still nice and healthy, which means they can continue to farm. And you know Burrito, they have to head back to base again. So if this is just rinse repeat from this moment on for Valence Squadron, just keep doing what you're doing and you're going to take game 1.
Valence Squadron making veteran calls here, I think, is what you're alluding to there.
It's a good point.
Yeah, making a veteran call. They recognize that that's one of the very, very few ways for Burrito to come back into this game is to overcommit to a bad fight, perhaps under a Phoenix. Fusify gets caught out, Lobster gets the stun, and the damage is just way too much for Fusify.
I'm not sure that's an elephant, because supposedly elephants never forget, and like that's happened like 4 times this game so far, and it's still happening.
Fusify getting caught out, has died twice now in this game, looking rough for the side of Burrito here, but they do still have 2 tier 2 towers up in duo and solo lane side. All 3 Phoenixes. They have not yet dropped a Fire Giant, so if they can get in there and make some kind of defense, either on their Phoenixes or at that Fire Giant, they'll have a chance to start working their way back in, as the gold lead now is up at 12,000.
And the story of this set as well is that Valence Squadron need to find these wins. They should be a team that beat Burrito on paper, and Burrito are a team that, like we said, they're near the bottom of the SPL. They need to get to top 6 to stay in the Pro League. And as it's looking now, they've got to try and find splits or wins out of these. You've seen Pappy's doing it so far, but doesn't look like it's going to be the case for Burrito.
He was indeed in trouble, just hanging out in his own jungle up there by the speed buff. Gets blown up. Ferrocrick and Fusify trying to catch Funballer on the side. The Dharmic Pillars do come out from Fusify, as well as the ultimate from Ferrocrick, but it's Lobster who blows up Fusify, and that is going to be the end there of game.